cowardice and intellectual confusion is dangerous. For more on this, let me bring in Alex Ryvchin from the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, joining me live from Sydney. Thanks for joining us again, Alex. First up, let me get your thoughts on this combined call from nations around the world. Australia signed up, of course, but importantly the EU and the US demanding a 21-day ceasefire across the Lebanese border. Is there any hope that could actually go into place? Surely Israel, under Benjamin Netanyahu at the moment, is absolutely committed to getting rid of as much of the Hezbollah firepower as it can.
Well, it's so easy to call for ceasefires, to call for de-escalation and calm and talk about a cycle of violence, but it takes a little bit of moral clarity, which sadly is lacking in our world, to actually understand why we are where we are and what's happening. And just as the conflict with Gaza began with Hamas's invasion, an invasion by 6,000 militants and civilians on October 7, and we all know what ensued. This is why we have a war there, and we hear calls for Hamas to be removed, for an era of peace to follow once Hamas is no longer a factor, no longer governing in Gaza, but no one has been able to articulate how that's going to happen without Israel taking them out by force. Now, in Lebanon, you've got a situation where on October 8, in solidarity with Hamas, Hezbollah began firing rockets, sending weaponized drones, planning its own infiltration of the border for no reason whatsoever. There's no provocation, there's no occupation, there's no territorial dispute between Israel and Lebanon. So again, we need to have clarity from our government to say the cause of this conflict, the cause of this escalation in Israel's north is Hezbollah's willingness to fight, its desire to destroy Israel. And the only way we can de-escalate is by calling on them to lay down their arms, withdraw their fighting forces from the south of their country where under international law they have no right to be. And that's when you will have a de-escalation. But this talk about moral equivalences and cycle of violence, it plays into their hands.
Well, it is just so strategically mindless as well, because we all know that to get Hezbollah to demilitarize that area, you need to get Iran involved. You need to get a commitment from Iran and the Lebanese government and Hezbollah to get all of their weaponry out of that area. Yet there's no mention of Iran from these countries.
The disappointing thing is that our government and governments around the world, they know this. They are well briefed. They understand the nefarious hand that Iran plays in the region. They know that Iran controls its proxies, whether it's the Houthis firing drones into Tel Aviv and hijacking international shipping, Hamas carried out their attacks with the coordination and planning of the IRGC. Hezbollah acts wholly at the instructions of the Iranian regime. We all know this. Governments know this. And yet they don't have the moral fibre, they don't have the strength of character to call it out, to denounce Iran and to denounce its proxies. Instead, they enter into these equivalences. They put more blame on Israel. And again, this only plays into the hands of the militants. They look at this and say, the international pressure will be on Israel and we can continue.
That's exactly what they want. It is exactly what they want. Just very briefly, I've got to get your thoughts on the fact that we have seen people bundled away from protests because they've displayed the Israeli flag. Yet now we have the flag of Hezbollah flown or worn on people's clothing at protests in Sydney, and nothing is done about it.
Well, like you said, this is a prescribed terrorist organisation in this country, not just its militant wing, but the entirety of the organisation. And there's no hierarchy of prescribed terrorist organisations. If you can't have people walking down the street brandishing ISIS flags or Al-Qaeda flags, they shouldn't be able to brandish the Hamas or Hezbollah flags. And this is an organisation that is engaged not only in a jihadist struggle against Israel, it has targeted Jewish civilian infrastructure around the world, including Jewish centres. It engages in money laundering, drug trafficking. Anyone that walks down the street and supports this organisation should be very closely looked at by our police.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Alex. I appreciate it. Alex Ryvchin there, Executive Council of Australian Jewry, and he's so right. The police need to be speaking with those people and keeping an eye on them. Now, I want to go down to Melbourne for